going to start, in any case, just give people a second to sit down. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here with everyone who's managed to shake off the post-election doldrums. This is where the fight back starts. It's going to be fighting starting in a lot of other places too, but this is one of them. The first of our two plenary sessions today is on the theme Palestine and other taboos. So speakers can interpret that quite literally. So can you and your questions, but it's about the issues and the methods that have been used to silence or marginalise discussion on Palestine. But for that matter, you might say colonialism more widely, you might think Palestine to other colonialisms. On our panel here we have Nargess Moballeghi, who's a journalist, of Mick Napier from the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign. We have Ibtehal Ramadan, who's a researcher at the University, and Omar Afzal from Afzal of Scotland. So without any more ado, I'm going to invite Mick to go first, and to now one of the speakers. You've got 15 minutes max. You can find a little bit. You have 15 minutes.
Thanks for making me go first, 2 days after the bad news. And remind you, I did a meeting on September the 11th with a British journalist, Tim Llewellyn, in Aberdeen. September the 11th, that evening, people were in a state of complete shock, didn't know how to play it. I don't think it's as extreme this morning, but we're all shocked and stunned by the election results. Some of you may be more perceptive than the rest of us and anticipated the result, but it certainly means bad times ahead. But of course it brings Britain into some kind of alignment with what's happening across Europe. And I do think we need to think about the terrible news and the good news this morning from Italy. Because Italy has seen the rise of the far right, the Northern League, or they used to be the Northern League, the Liga, Islamophobic, massively pro-Israel, against immigrants. Really, a lot of the fascists from the Second World War have left that influence inside the Liga. But what's also fascinating is the sardines. The sardines are remarkable. I see quizzical looks, as you might much you've been smoking. When the Liga leader said that he could pack squares across Italy with his dirty anti-immigrant message, a bunch of guys and gals just said, look, we'll show that creep how to pack squares. And they put out a call. It was out with the standard political parties, out with the left parties. They put out a call to pack the squares of Italy. I used to work in Italy, so you know how important and big the squares can be. And they packed the squares. They started to pack squares like sardines. There were so many of them. And out-pack the Northern League. And it's a dramatic moment, I think. And I think we should think about that in more general terms. That sometimes when it's a dark night, the solution doesn't always come from experienced politicals. It doesn't always come from formal structures. It can sometimes come from just some eruption from inside the civilian body. But of course we don't wait for that. We have to try and plan as much as we possibly can. So there's Italy, there's France, there's Germany, where the news seems to be consistently of a drift towards the right. It seems to be the government criminalising BDS, activities that many of us are involved in. And it just seems that the lights may not be going out all over Europe, but they're getting a bit dim in quite a few places. Here in Britain, we saw Boris Johnson warn us against brown-skinned people. He said 40 million Turks were going to be coming to Britain if we didn't have Brexit. The walls had to go up, the barriers had to go up against these brown-skinned people because they were Muslims. It was not a racist dog whistle, it was a straightforward inflammation of racism that he pandered to, and that example has to stand for so many other examples that people in this room can adduce. And don't forget, there's a lot of talk about Johnson. We saw that Rees-Mogg was banished from the TV screens after saying how clever he would have been inside Grenfell. He, of course, would never have gone near Grenfell. But also, I didn't see Priti Patel during the election campaign very much. The one who was calling on, I forget the TV programme, but calling for hanging that he introduced a few years ago. But she's also an exemplar of the Islamophobia that's going to be at the heart of this regime. She's a great fan of the BJP in India, and we know that they have come into government substantially on the basis of organising a massacre of Muslims. We know that they're actually racing much, much faster even than Israel to define nationality and identity in India on the basis of religion, Hinduism in their case. But it's a very dark trajectory in India. She's very much a fan of that. And don't forget, she went and shows the twins that operate here. She was fired by Theresa May when she went to Israel and met secretly with Israeli politicians and officers, military officers, and then came back and suggested that British humanitarian aid should, to some degree, be redirected towards the Israeli army, even as the Israeli army stood accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity. So, when you think of Patel and you think of Sajid Javid and you think of Boris Johnson, it's a very dark triumvirate that's going to be at the top three in this government. So hard times coming. I mean, I may be the only person here in the room who spent some time on the same platform as Boris Johnson. I spent a few hours with Jeremy Corbyn as well. One was with Jeremy Corbyn outside the Libyan embassy in Tunis, where we went on a delegation, but we were the only two who went to this gigantic demonstration outside the embassy calling for the overthrow of the Libyan dictatorship. And Jeremy Corbyn's a very nice guy. We spent a couple of hours talking, sometimes chanting, and it was somebody that you would agree with on virtually everything. Nice guy. I spent a couple of hours, an hour or so on the platform with Johnson when he ran for rector of Edinburgh University. I was representing John Kilcher, so I had to share the platform with a slug. And I remember him as just pretty much an upper-class twit, somebody who had a massive sense of entitlement. He was Minister of Education at that time, and he brought that record to his attempt to be elected rector of Edinburgh University. He was a horrible individual, but I'm trying to say this is not about personalities. It's about a substantial shift in the direction of the British government in line with bigger shifts worldwide. Not just Bolsonaro in Brazil, not just people like that. I think the removal of people like Ken Clarke, the removal of the ex-Chancellor, the bringing in of Patel and so on, is a very significant shift of the Conservative Party to the right. And I think the next 5 years are not going to be like the last 5 years. They're going to be much more, not dog whistles, much more openly Islamophobic and racist, even with Sajid Javid there at the top. And I think we're in for a very hard time indeed. Because Islamophobia, I'm involved in the Scottish Palestine Solidarity campaign, Islamophobia and support for the State of Israel, a commitment to the Zionist project, go very, very much hand in hand. And the best example that you all know, forgive me for telling you if you do know already, Tommy Robinson was due to tour the USA last year. Tommy Robinson, everybody here knows, a militant Islamophobe. He's a graduate of the BNP, a neo-Nazi organisation. He's masked some of the rhetoric of that organisation, but that's where he comes from, and he hasn't left it behind him. He's moved from that formation, and he's carried militant Islamophobia into the body politic as far as possible. You may not know a guy called Greg Roman. Greg Roman works for the Middle East Foundation, and I encountered Greg Roman a couple of years ago. He used to be part of the Israeli security apparatus. He's a graduate of the, what's it called again? Herzliya the Herzliya security hub in Israel, he works for the Middle East Foundation, and he was the organiser of a tour by Tommy Robinson to the USA last year. It didn't come off because I think it was Democratic congressmen blocked him in some way. But the Guardian and other newspapers reported Robinson was going to go to the USA to speak to Islamophobic and Zionist audiences, and he was expected to come back with £1 million in his pocket for his journalism. Now, he's not got £1 million, but you can see that there's an organising core that brings together Islamophobes and the pro-Israel lobby in the USA and also in Britain. And we discussed briefly earlier in one of the workshops the Henry Jackson Society. The Henry Jackson Society has done a lot of research on it. David Miller, who used to be in Glasgow, he's now at Exeter, Bristol now. They did a report on the analysis of the Henry Jackson Society, showing the interaction of personnel, funding, overlapping activities and mutual support, and the Henry Jackson Society exists to form a coalition of the neocons, the pro-war brigade, Islamophobic elements, and the pro-Israel lobby. That's what it works out of its offices to achieve, and it does that rather effectively. It's not just that you've got Lord this and Lady that, and a bunch of Tory MPs and some Labour MPs who signed the founding statement of the Henry Jackson Society. It reaches down to this area here. Jim Murphy. Yes, you remember Some Dark Shadows Do Lift. Jim Murphy was active speaking on behalf of the Henry Jackson Society, and he briefly became leader of the Scottish Labour Party. So they have an influence here, and they spread their poison into the body politic at every opportunity. But it's even worse than that. A couple of years ago, we had we've been pushing as a campaign inside the Edinburgh Festival to drive out all state-sponsored cultural troops from the biggest arts festival in the world, with some considerable success. The last few years there's been none. But in 2016, we had a major success. The year before, I think it was, my chronology is crap. But I think it was 2016, Glasgow Friends of Israel and their Scottish umbrella group organised an event in Edinburgh during the festival. It was called the Shalom Festival, the Peace Festival, and it was committed to, quote-unquote, the celebration of all things Israeli. All things. Snipers, apartheid roads, the lot. It wasn't hidden. And they were sponsored, the appeal went out to build that event. It was endorsed, to say sponsored, by Nicola Sturgeon on behalf of the SNP. And before we get a tribal response in this room, and Kezia Dugdale for the Labour Party, and the Lib Dem leader as well. They all called for support for this event, which was called to support all things Israeli. And so that, I think, tells you that the problem's not just with the Stand Up to Racism March, who allow Israeli flags and banners and so on. It's much, much wider than that in terms of a reluctance and a fear of challenging the Israeli lobby outright. And when asked to take a stand for or against, coming out against, there's a desire not to challenge them, if I can put it that way. So how did we get here? I don't know if research has been done about the factors that led to how people voted. We tell them that's fine to go. I don't know if any research has been done about what made people vote in particular. How important was it, the factors that led people to vote? You know, for example, there's been a lot of research done in the USA on how American Jews vote. And everybody is led to believe that when they go to the polls, it's all about Israel. Actually, when you give Israeli Jews, when you give American Jews a list of factors, health, civil rights, pensions, Israel, etc., 13 items, and you say, can you please order these in the importance of how they will influence your vote? Israel comes at the bottom. It's 12 or 13. They don't go to the polls thinking about Israel, right? American Jews don't behave in the way they're led to expect them to do. Now, in terms of British voting in the last election, I don't know what the results are in terms of how important were the allegations of anti-Semitism. Shut up. Okay. I don't know how important. You spelled shut wrong. I don't know how important was the anti-Semitism allegation against the smears against Jeremy Corbyn. I don't know when people went to vote in these mining villages and Tories ended up being elected. I don't know how important the anti-Semitism. I suspect it was massively to do with Brexit, and it was a referendum on Brexit. But it did some damage, if not directly, in terms of dampening morale, silencing voices. And you know what? There's something weird in the water when the 3 Jewish newspapers in Britain can all come out on the same day with a headline that says, Jeremy Corbyn is an existential threat to British Jews. What does that mean? Death camps? I mean, this is not serious. This is madness of a certain degree. So how important was that in the end result? I don't know, but it has some significance. And I'll just have to end this, but I like Jeremy Corbyn very much. He's a decent guy, but decent guys don't come up against knife men, thugs and slugs like Johnson and win. It takes somebody else. It takes a different type of fighter, man or woman. Thanks. Jeremy should have, right at the beginning, refused to be shut up. He kept on apologising for anti-Semitism when there was no anti-Semitism. He kept on apologising. And you know, Republican strategists will tell you, when they go into an election, they identify an enemy, and that enemy ideally should be somebody who you punch and punch and punch, and they can't punch back. That's how they do it. And Jeremy was the perfect target. They punched and punched and punched him. They fired, they expelled his comrades like Jackie Walker, like Mark Wadsworth, Tony Greenstein, and various others, and Jeremy threw them under the bus. Not happily, but he did it. And the end result is, they're still coming for Jeremy Corbyn today. My belief is he'll be expelled from the Labour Party, something like that. But look, this is a discussion about closing down public space. And I think the anti-Semitism, that madness, is an example of a successful effort to shut down public spaces. Edinburgh churches that refuse a black Jewish woman the right to speak because she's an anti-Semite. Where the most prestigious pro-Palestine speaker you'll probably find on the planet, the UN rapporteur came to speak in Edinburgh on the search for a just solution in Palestine, and he was banned. It was too controversial. Friends, a successful attack, a successful attack is something we need to learn from. How you stand your ground firmly and not get wrong-footed. But I fear this successful attack on us by the state, by the government, will give them heart, and they'll be looking for parallel attacks on the area of Islamophobia to make certain thoughts unthinkable and certain thoughts in themselves criminalised. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. I'm sure those closing thoughts will make absolutely right. We need to think deeply about them. I should also say good afternoon to everybody who's joining us on the live feed, because this event's being streamed via Facebook Live from the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign page. It happens to be easier to do that way, so if anybody's on social media now, if you want to direct your friends who aren't here to the Facebook Live event from SPSC's Facebook page, that would be great. And now I'm going to hand over to Ibtehal, who's a Palestinian and is also a researcher at the University.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I would actually try to speak and to expand on what Mick has started to speak about. I will start with what is Islamophobia. And there is a recent all-parliamentary party group that has been rejected actually by the Conservative government recently. They have not acknowledged that the definition that has been actually suggested by the all-parliamentary group report, which is, and I kind of disagree partially with this Islamophobia definition, is that Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. So this actually, I think I totally understand that this type of definition was meant to be trying to resolve issues of Muslim communities within the UK. But then try actually to have the government to accept it in order to be operated across legislation and to protect Muslims and their rights, and to recognize the right of Muslims, not just in terms of expressions of Muslimness like wearing hijab, having beard, also to protect and accept their political participation equally to other minority groups, whether religious or national minorities or ethnic minorities. So now there are other scholars who have spoken about Islamophobia in terms of a kind of comparison between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and I don't go to this route because my study has not been focusing on the Jewish history in Europe, but I will follow Professor Salman Sayyid in his definition of Islamophobia, who actually takes a global perception of Islamophobia. It's not a local issue for Muslims in the UK or Muslims in Europe or Muslims in the West. It's a global issue about Muslims' political mobilization beyond the West as well as the West, and it is about silencing the Muslim autonomy across the globe. And this is very much important in terms of how we look at Islamophobia and how Islamophobia is linked to silencing any discussion about Palestine. Because Palestinian people and the cause of Palestine is not located in the UK. Geographically, it's not affected by the UK local policies, but it has to do with the UK and the Western international policies. So now my definition of Islamophobia, and we need actually to bear this definition in mind. I have developed this definition during my PhD, and I'm working on this actually also for my postdoc. Is triggered by a Western fear, and there is this whole idea of Islamophobia and the attachment of phobia as in an irrational fear. It's a rational fear actually, but this has been distracting the whole discussion about Islamophobia, the idea of phobia. But it's a fear, it's a Western fear of the transruptive effect Islam can have through transcultural processes in a multicultural society in the UK or outside the UK, but also through the rise of Muslim political mobilization and agency in the West and beyond the West. This fear has revived an ideology. So basically we need to think about Islamophobia as an ideology actually. It's not just targeting a lady with hijab or shouting at someone in the street. No, it's not about the popular racism. No, it's beyond that. This fear has revived an ideology which has been latent during the times when Muslims show complete submission and subservient to global Western order that controls the patterns of thoughts and meanings facilitated by a cyber technology global world on the individual, societal and global levels that informs a global consensus of Muslims and Islam as the ultimate enemy, which ultimately aims at domesticating Muslims. The outward manifestation of this ideology are diverse acts of anti-Muslim racism through societal exclusion, socio-economic deprivation and anti-terrorism legislation, not just at a state level but globally, that principally target Muslims in the West and beyond, but also opposes Muslim political agency in Western nation states and beyond. So bearing in mind that this is my idea of Islamophobia, we can apply how Islamophobia functions when it comes to silencing any discussion of Israel's continuous occupation of lands in the West Bank, or the recent actually annexing of the West Bank by the Israeli government, or the annexing of the Jordan Valley by the Israeli government, which is supported by the United States government, particularly Israel. So, for the sake of time, I would like to touch on some of the aspects in relation to how the war and terror discourse is silencing any support to Palestinian cause and criticism of Israeli occupation through, first, academic discourse, media and public discourse, political discourse, legislative regulations. And these are the tools that are aiming actually at curtailing any opposition to the current world order, not just for Muslims, not just for anyone who speaks for Palestine, but also for Westerners who speak about issues that they think the government, the state actually policies are acting in a double standard, not just for any cause in the Middle East, but also within the state. So any dissent that would actually appear to be happening from even white people against their government would be silenced. But Islamophobia is the first step that would silence Muslims, and then other regulations silence non-Muslims. So for example, I'm going actually to tell you that the severe violation of human rights now that's happening in Egypt. This is about Islamophobia. Now the Egyptian government, the winning of the Ikhwan, or the Muslim Brotherhood, at the first three elections has triggered comments among politicians in the West, actually. I've watched a YouTube by a US senator that he said, when we allow people to go and vote, they have made the wrong decision. And so there was actually a support from some of the governments in the West to what happened in Egypt, the coup in Egypt. And interestingly, the coup has not been described as such in a lot of political discussions in the West. For example, Obama didn't even use the word coup when he commented on what happened in Egypt. William Hague, actually the foreign secretary then, condemned what he termed as military intervention. He didn't name it as a coup. It was a military intervention, and you always will look at the wording of how things, and we will come back to this. When a Palestinian resists, he's a terrorist. When an Israeli soldier actually crossed the borders of Gaza Strip, which the Israeli army has decided unilaterally to leave and withdraw from, he's defending the lands of Israel. He's defending the lands of Israel by actually approaching and crossing the borders of Gaza and killing civilians. This is a defense. Any opposition to Egyptian government now is labeled as terrorism. And they sought the support of the United States to announce the Muslim Brotherhood actually as a terrorist group, and where people have been a lot of people have been arrested and detained, and their properties has been confiscated in Egypt. And the West actually is turning the blind eye to the massive violation of human rights that is happening in Egypt now. A funny thing that is actually also happening in Egypt, if any Coptic Christian Egyptian goes against the government, he will be actually arrested under the threat or under the actual accusation of being a terrorist who belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood. He's a Christian Coptic. But this is the only actually legitimate language that has been used globally. So even if you are a Christian and a Coptic Christian, you will be arrested under the accusation that you are a Muslim Brotherhood undercover. So that actually has gone mad in the Middle East. Anyone who's doing anything or trying to accuse the government or criticize the government, they will be labeled as first Muslim Brotherhood, then terrorists. Even if they are socialists, if they are secular, it doesn't matter. The label of terrorism has been actually associated now in the Middle East with anyone who is a Muslim Brotherhood. So they have to find a file or create a file for you to forge a file that you belong to the Muslim Brotherhood, and then you are a terrorist. This is one thing, how they try to silence any dissent, not just in the West, globally, through this Islamophobic rhetoric. So in Saudi Arabia, I'm sure that all of you are more aware than myself of what's happening now in Saudi Arabia under the MBS regime. You know what is the MBS regime? Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He's not actually only arresting Saudis. Recently, they have arrested a lot of Palestinians who've been in Saudi Arabia, working there for over 50 years since the establishment of the kingdom, under arrest. So they were detained, tortured by foreign agents in Saudi Arabia, and they were not actually Palestinian National Authority that is headed by Abbas knows all about it, and they actually haven't tried to talk to the Saudi government, telling them what are the accusations against these Palestinians. So, and they are labeled as terrorists without even actually accusing them of anything. Now, in terms of the Islamophobia in Palestine, recently, actually, the Israeli announcement about the annexation of the West Bank to Israel that has been celebrated by Trump and recognized as not being a breach of the United Nations or the international law. The funny and silly response of the Palestinian National Authority so-called president Mahmoud Abbas said that he has regretted that Donald Trump has not consulted him before making this announcement, as though Abbas is being consulted since or even before the Oslo Accord about anything that is related to Palestine. The role of the Palestinian National Authority, particularly in the Ramallah now, has been since the Oslo Accord to confirm that Israel receives peace at the expense of Palestinians. So what they will do actually as part of the security so they actually, as part of the security collaboration between the Palestinian National Authority and Israel, is that anyone who is suspected by Israel, they will just give the name to Palestinian National Authority, and the Palestinian police people will attack this person and arrest him and then hand him to Israel, which actually will then torture them and imprison them. That is the role of the Palestinian National Authority, which is actually supported by the West, because this whole idea of Palestinian National Authority has not brought any success to any Palestinian free land, even since Oslo. There is more occupation of the land. They have confiscated more lands in East Jerusalem. They have now annexed the West Bank. And what is happening of this gang groups of the Palestinian National is that they are becoming more rich and richer, and the Palestinian people are losing their land and they are losing their rights. So that's one thing about how Islamophobia is operated in Palestine by Palestinian agents of the West and Israel. I think I need actually to wrap it up now. But recently, the Israeli recent assassination of Ibtehal Ramadan, 2 weeks ago, when there was a 2-day of Israeli offense against Gaza Strip, in which they killed more than 34 Palestinians and they wounded more than 100 Palestinians. There were a lot of Palestinian activists and journalists who were actually sending videos on YouTube, on WhatsApp and Facebook. What happened is that the Facebook administration has blocked these Palestinians because they want to silence any access from the international activists to see the crimes of Israel against civilians in Gaza Strip. So there are a lot of Palestinian activists accounts on WhatsApp and Facebook. They were immediately blocked within 1 day because they were actually having shooting what's happening and sending it live on WhatsApp. And this is actually the complacency of also this whole securitizing governance that's happening through the Facebook and WhatsApp. I actually stop at this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ibtehal, speaking from her experience both as a Palestinian and as a researcher at Edinburgh University. Good afternoon and welcome to the people who've just joined us, and a reminder that this event is being live streamed so people can watch it on Facebook live from the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign page. Thank you. And now I need to pass over to Nargess is a journalist who's covered quite a lot of independent issues that we're discussing at this conference.
Hi everyone, how are we doing? It's been a tough couple of days now. So for this panel, we're discussing how Palestine and other taboos, so Islamophobia, accusations of extremism, anti-Semitism, limit discussion of Palestine and other issues. I've been told that this date was chosen before the election was announced, so it's just a matter of fate that we're talking today. I'm going to try and spend my 10-15 minutes looking at this question through the lens of the media and media coverage. And of course, the treatment of Jeremy Corbyn, things that we've been going through the last few months, accusations of anti-Semitism is a big part of that. But I'm going to start on the Palestinian issue more broadly, and on the media coverage of it, and that is actually a more positive story. I studied journalism at City University in London for 4 years, and I started in 2003, so it's quite a while ago, 16 years ago. And at that time, probably the fastest paced media was your 24-hour news cycle. So Sky News being the most established, obviously privately owned by Rupert Murdoch. We did have BBC News 24, I think it had been running for a couple of years by that point. And that was basically it. Daily routine for journalists and for journalist students like myself is that we would come in and there would be a table very much like this, and there would be a pile of newspapers on it. And there'd be a few international papers, usually a couple from the United States. And that was literally the global news on your desk every day when you would come into work. In 2003, when I started university, 2 social media platforms, for those of you who are over 30, you might remember, Hi-Fi and MySpace launched. And they were not news-centric. There was no such thing as social media. The term didn't exist. We didn't study it. There wasn't courses on it. Now I think there's degrees on it, but it didn't exist in that realm. And as a London university studying journalism, it was probably more diverse than other universities, but basically it was mostly white. There were hardly any minority students, hardly any Muslims, certainly in the teaching staff. Mark Wadsworth was my only minority lecturer at City University at the time. And that's pretty representative of journalism still today. 94% of journalists are white, 0.4% are Muslim, 0.2% are black, where in the population, those two groups account for about 4% of the population, so they're underrepresented. And the media was still very much controlled, structured, editorial still held absolute control of the reins, and the consequences of that for a discussion or a topic like Palestine was that it was near impossible to penetrate the establishment line on the topic, and that's just the way that it had always been. Towards the end of my studies, 2007, Facebook launched and Twitter launched. But what seemed more significant at that time was alternative media launch, so Al Jazeera, stations like Press TV, and they really moved the goalposts for the English-speaking audience on issues like Palestine and the spectrum of coverage that people could receive. And I think the 2009 war was a pivotal moment in that. Al Jazeera and Press TV were both on Skybox at that time, so literally for the first time, people who were flicking through the news station at the end of the evening over dinner or after work, they probably tuned into the BBC, they probably saw a small snippet about what was happening, usually with an Israeli official. And if they just went up 2 channels, they suddenly saw something else. Al Jazeera and Press TV were both doing 24-hour news coverage. They were using local journalists on the ground inside Gaza. And viewers just saw 2 different stories that didn't add up, and they started questioning the coverage. And in 2009, social media was popular, but it was still not news-centric. Even, I would say, Twitter at that stage was not news-centric. That changed by the time we got to the 2014 Gaza war. By that time, alternative media had been consistently putting that pressure on to open the space in the goalposts, but social media had almost become the news cycle. So a lot of the time, the mainstream media were either playing catch-up or reluctantly, and very reluctantly, we still know how bad their coverage is, but they were reluctantly being forced to concede at least some space on the issue because of the virality of social media platforms, especially some of the imagery that was coming out. So it felt at that time that this imbalanced editorial that was used to dictate what we think was flipped at some points, where what we were thinking was forcing editorial to concede a little bit of space. And just as an example, in the first 14 days of the 2014 conflict, Gaza under attack was tweeted 4 million times, whereas Israel under fire was only tweeted 200,000. So that space was opening. And then there was Palestinian grassroots journalists and citizen activists who were getting us the information out instantly, although you mentioned now how that has been clamped down on, and we've seen a pushback to what was happening at that time. So this journey, this new journalistic ecosystem, has been positive for the Palestinian cause, and it has been positive to exponentially grow the support for Palestinians in countries like Britain. But that is exactly why there's been such a vicious fight back from those that are against this tide. So this includes the social media space itself, you mentioned this, which has increasingly, and especially in recent years, become very aggressively capitalistic. It's become a business model. They have their own agenda, they have their own editorial, and that's drastically changed how we as journalists and other people can operate in social media spaces. And I think, the algorithms, the bots, Cambridge Analytica, for example, the scandal kind of illustrates that really well. So social media is now being used as a tool to penetrate or infiltrate the so-called democratic process and other media agendas. And we saw that in Brexit and we saw that in this election as well. And I think we don't pay enough attention to that. There was just an Amnesty report put out about Facebook by a friend of mine that talks deeply about how Facebook especially is infiltrating into these processes. And then now this omniscient editor that we have no access to, I get targeted often because I talk often about the far right, I attend the far right demos. The far right has a network online. If you post something, they tell their network, and their network shuts you down. They mass report you. My page gets shut down very frequently. In fact, if I get reported again, my whole page will get taken down. So I'm a Muslim journalist that is veiled, talking on anti-racism issues, and I'm being targeted by fascists, and I'm being shut down. There is no way to contact Facebook. There is no way to know what Facebook's guidelines are. And I did some research for international NGO about abuse that women get. I have a very small Facebook page, 25,000 likes, comparative to people who have many, many hundreds of thousands. Between me and the second smallest person that was interviewed, she had 250,000, but I was the only veiled woman. I got about 10 times more death threats, rape threats, and attacks than others. So the way that the far right is using social media spaces is a real thing, and the social media platforms are not addressing it. Also, a recent documentary I did on Islamophobia was clamped down on. Facebook removed it 6 times. I did it for a client in Germany who YouTube in Germany turned around and said because it's about Islamophobia, it's religious content, so they're not allowed to promote it because it might offend people. If we balance that out with how they've dealt with issues such as Brexit and the whole issues around Cambridge Analytica, you can see the stark difference. So this is this alliance between the mainstream media and politics, pro-Israel organisations, Israel itself, as well as the far-right regime. And I think that's what's really been happening in our politics, but also in our media spaces. I know there's someone here from IHRC who might be able to talk about that connection maybe with the Al-Quds Day protest to illustrate this. So the media connects very significantly into this. Tommy Robinson and Kate Hopkins have reinvented themselves as journalists. They work for Ezra Levant at The Rebel, who's the Canadian Steve Bannon. These are people of, this network is international, it's been bankrolled by the same people, the Mercers, the Ezra Levants. And I think, really, when we look at what's been happening in the last few months, and this truly unprecedented and relentless and vicious campaign against Jeremy Corbyn, in which the anti-Semitism scandal has really been politicised, we can see those forces at play. I did a quick Google search. I mean, people have been telling me this, but I fact-checked it for myself, and I did do a quick Google search. Between 2010 and 2015, I searched for any form of articles, news stories about Jeremy Corbyn and anti-Semitism. There literally was not a single one up until 2015, when he was elected. There was one story that came from the Jewish Chronicle, and it was one when Jeremy was calling for a public inquiry on the pro-Israel lobby. The word anti-Semitism was not in the article, so this is something that they've put into the back-end algorithm of this story, so that when you search it, it comes up. But other than that, there was nothing. But we know that since 2015, it's been an absolute relentless hounding, and there's been this concerted effort by the entirety of the establishment, including in primarily times from the left itself, to push this narrative, to make sure that the position Jeremy Corbyn had on Palestine, as many of his supporters had on Palestine, and this growth in support for the Palestinian cause didn't grow or make it into power. Of course, the reasons why Jeremy Corbyn has lost this election are very vast and deep, but I'm trying to keep on topic and talk about this one issue. So I've been researching this issue for a couple of years for some documentary work I'm doing, and I asked Jewish professor Santiago Slabodowski about this issue, this attempt that we're to make anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. I'd much rather quote from him than speak for myself. And he says that it's important to clarify that Zionism is one Jewish project. We can't deny that. It may make you feel uncomfortable, but we can't deny it. It's one Jewish project that at some point in history, for multiple reasons, took normativity. So the construction of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism has to do with the development happening most of the time after the 1960s, and we can't deny that there is anti-Semitism. However, what Corbyn did right was something that I believe is going to be seen in history as a very good step towards what is coming in the future. What he decided was to spend time understanding the establishment of the Jewish community is crumbling down, and there are many other groups emerging as alternatives. He decided to meet with some of those alternative Jewish groups. And actually, when I was looking back on my notes of that discussion, I had about 3 hours discussion with him in Granada about this, I came across a comment he made, which is about Palestine, but I think could sound like advice for us today after this election as well. He said, if we think of a solution with the tools we have today, we're going to keep carrying the problems and the tools we have today with us. So we need to engage with a strong critique against what is happening today in the region in order for something else to emerge, and it should emerge organically from the people who are truly struggling. We cannot expect to solve the problem by employing the same tools or the same voices that created the problem. The future is bright, but we need to be very, very careful about what is happening right now, because the future is not going to come easily, and many people are going to suffer. And those communities need our support. And so I think it's very difficult to be hopeful, when we've just had this really bad, what feels like a bad defeat. But I think we need to understand that this is not it's not a resurgence. This is a last desperate attempt. And we need to place the moment we're in now in a longer trajectory and recognise that that trajectory is going in a positive direction. And we do need to take a few days, and then I think be hopeful. I think if the establishment had been smarter, they might not have done this, because maybe Jeremy Corbyn in power might have bought them a few years and a few decades. But as it is, this is the way that things are. And if it's a fight, then it's a fight, and we should fight by speaking our principles even louder, being more confident in saying radical things, and knowing that being on the right side of the argument, you might not see the solution, you might not see the victories to yesterday or today or in 5 years or in your lifetime, but they will come. So I wanted to maybe leave on that hopeful note, and that is something I would say that the Palestinian cause has taught us.
Thank you very much, and I think it really is important to focus on just how where this assault from the far it's not just comfort for us, but perhaps it's also a sign of desperation, a sign that things are going to change. The next speaker is Omar from the Muslim Council of Scotland. It's always a pleasure to have him here. It's our meeting.
Thanks, Richard. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone, good afternoon, good evening. First of all, thanks to Richard, and I HRC exactly the invitation to speak here today. It is a difficult time just now. I think a lot of people are, as has been mentioned across the panel, a lot of us are feeling kind of a little bit dejected probably. And I think there's a lot of lessons to learn actually, as has been mentioned across the panel. I met Richard yesterday at the mosque and he was leafleting for today's event, and he asked me about my preparation for today, and I said, to be honest, I've probably ripped my speech up and started again after what happened on Thursday. But hopefully I'll try to fuse the two, the situation with Jeremy Corbyn, which I think has many parallels with the theme of today's conference, and certainly with the first plenary session here. I mean, actually, when I saw what was going on with Jeremy Corbyn and actually what the result was, what came to mind was actually a quote from Malcolm X. And he said it at a time when Lyndon B. Johnson was up against Goldberg for the American election. And what he said was basically that the only thing that made him acceptable to the world was that the shrewd capitalists, the shrewd imperialists knew that the only way people would run towards the fox would be if she showed them a wolf. So they created a ghastly alternative and had the whole world hoping that Johnson would be Goldwater. So I think that for me in essence sums up what's been going on with Jeremy Corbyn. So how is it you create that ghastly alternative? Somebody like Jeremy Corbyn, who we all know from being a celebrated social justice warrior, a defender of the poor, of minorities, and actually, in my opinion, the leader of the anti-war movement in Western Europe. He's the guy, if you remember, who gave that rousing speech, considered as one of the great speeches at that time, at the Million Man March in London. So how does he go from being that to being a caricature of a traitorous anti-Semite who's dangerous to the country, and essentially as the wolf in the parody offered by Malcolm X? So the first thing that Jeremy Corbyn faces is delegitimisation. So basically, he's shown us not having the support of the parliamentary Labour Party, he's part of a faction of the party that's taking over the mainstream, and then alongside that there's smear campaigns, so he's cast as treacherous. He's this terrorist sympathiser that's linked with Hamas and the IRA. He's a traitor that's linked to East European communists and the Russians. And if we put aside actually the Brexit argument and indeed the political arguments as to why he lost the election, if you think about it just as a comparison of the two personalities, this is essentially how we turn people away from the wolf to the fox. So Jeremy Corbyn is seen as Boris Johnson in comparison to Jeremy Corbyn is seen as some kind of lesser of two evils. And that process is pretty similar to what CSOs or civil society organisations are going through and be vocal on issues such as Palestine, Kashmir, Prevent, Schedule 7. So there's four kind of broad areas that I wanted to talk about in terms of the theme of this plenary session. The first was to understand Islamophobia as an industry. So again, this has been touched upon by the other panel members as well. You've got the think tanks and the institutes, the Evangelical Americans, for example, Gatestone Institute, Henry Jackson Society, who are basically bankrolling a lot of the Islamophobic rhetoric that's coming out there. A lot of the journalists like Tommy Robinson, Aldridge, Watson, etc., and all these people who are poisoning the airwaves. The other thing that's interesting to note is actually the link of the Islamophobia industry with the weapons industry as well. Now, the weapons industry is most probably the biggest industry in the world, and in order for you to be able to sell those weapons, you need wars, and in order to have wars, you need to be able to be able to drop bombs on people on the other side of the world that you have no connection with, we've got to dehumanise them. And part of that dehumanisation process is actually the Islamophobia industry, which pumps out this Islamophobia narrative, the rhetoric of the Muslims who are trying to take over Europe through this unique conspiracy theory or the theory of displacement. And again, that ties in with the Islamophobia industry through people like Douglas Murray who are pumping that narrative out through their funded work. The second part of it is Muslim organisations being displaced by gatekeepers. So the biggest one to look at is, for example, the MCB, who represents around 600 Muslim organisations in the UK. They're regularly framed as an Ikhwani organisation. They're part of the frame as being part of Muslim Brotherhood, and again, as part of this cabal of organisations that's trying to shut down criticism of Islam and trying to push through this great displacement theory. So that's part of it as well. Up here in Scotland, we've got a situation as well where an organisation like the MCS, which is a kind of almost like a mirror of the MCP, but the Scottish version, they would have their voice drowned out by members of the third sector, specifically those organisations who have had some kind of CPE or prevailing funding, and who tend to be more agreeable with the official line as opposed to something like MCS, who would probably be more vocal in their opposition. Part of that is also, as you mentioned, the definition. What happened here in Scotland was the definition was accepted by the political parties, but it wasn't accepted by the Scottish Government. Now, the definition itself is not perfect, but the idea of having the definition accepted was the fact that there was some kind of acknowledgement, at least, of Islamophobia out there as an issue. And in some cases, just having the consensus around there being a definition would have been stronger than having a perfect definition, certainly in this case. So the parties accepted the definition, but the Scottish Government didn't. Now, if you look at the definition of anti-Semitism, that was accepted across the board without any kind of caveat. So what the Scottish Government did up here was they had a series of workshops where they invited the Muslim community and the wider community as well to come and, in a sense, debate this definition and look at what people's opinions were on it. And what actually happened at those workshops was that the workshops were essentially led down a certain direction, and it was along the direction of there isn't a consensus on this definition, therefore we're going to have a kind of moratorium on it. That was essentially the feeling, the feedback that came from those workshop sessions. So again, if you compare that with other communities, say for example the Sikh community, where Sikhs are accepted as a race group as well as a religion, there hasn't been that level of scrutiny on other communities as there is in the Muslim community, and this causes a kind of constriction in the ability of the Muslim community then to take forward its concerns when it's getting that kind of response from officials. Alongside that, there's been a kind of, I would say, a misuse of the interfaith platform. So Muslims, if you ask any Muslim what their favourite topic is to talk about, it's probably Islam. Muslims are a scholarly people, talking about religion, having comparative religion discussions, sitting with people of the faith and discussing faith in general. That is something that the Muslim community is incredibly keen on and known for as well. So what's been happening in the kind of interfaith environment is, and it links to the last point about gatekeeping, where you have some organisations displacing what you traditionally see as the voice of the community. So organisations, instead of going to those representative organisations, they go directly to some of the large mosques, for example, or they go directly to grassroots Muslim organisations, and they would say, look, we're a Zionist organisation, I'm a Zionist, I'm a proud Zionist, you're a proud pro-Palestinian, but let's put that to one side and let's concentrate on these other issues. So what it essentially does is it would bring a Zionist organisation onto the same platform as somebody who would traditionally be a pro-Palestinian organisation, and what it essentially does is it gives this impression of a kind of tacit acceptance of that position of Zionism. So that's another thing that Muslim organisations such as MCS are facing. Alongside that, what was very interesting was actually the intervention of the Chief Rabbi within the election as well. That's something that in my own kind of lifetime, and I'm quite with the rest of the panel, isn't something that I've ever seen before, and it's not actually something that the Muslim community have either. So alongside that, in the political environment, we recently had the launch of Islamophobia Awareness Month for the first time in the Scottish Parliament. That's by MIND for England. MIND is one of these organisations alongside CAGE and HRC who have been being ostracised and demonised in the media. So MIND had this launch in the Scottish Parliament, and what we heard was that there was lobbying in the background to make sure no members of Parliament would attend that, specifically because it was MIND who had organised that event. So again, this shows our ability to actually reach into political circles, to have our voices heard at the highest levels. It's been constricted in that way. In terms of the media environment, and I'll finish up on that as well. Nargess covered it quite well there. There's been the demonisation, there's been the smears. One of the most interesting things that's happened now is the way in which non-peer-reviewed studies have been taken as gospel in the media. So the one that comes to mind is the 84% of Muslims of paedophiles are Muslim kind of thing, which came from the Grooming Gang scandal. And again, that wasn't a peer-reviewed document, and it's actually been completely debunked as well. And certainly the figures, which was based on a very restrictive, sample, a very restrictive sample. So all that adds into this idea that if you are part of, and actually, sorry, just the words, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And actually, the point that Nargess made about social media, if you speak to the Kashmiri activists, they actually say that 2008 was a turning point for them. In 2008, that's when they actually discovered the power of social media, and that's when Kashmir started to for them, they started to get further up the political agenda worldwide again, and specifically because they were able to take their message directly to the world. And in some cases, people all around the world were actually living through what they were living through in occupation, because they were able to see it on a day-to-day basis and see the struggles they were going through. So just to sum up, all this, the political environment, gatekeeping, the abusive interfaith platform, the media environment, Islamophobia being not just a phenomenon that Muslims experience on a day-to-day basis, but actually as a global industry. All this leads to the ability of the inability of Muslim representative organisations to effectively represent the community on a number of different platforms, and for genuine voices to be drowned out and replaced with ones that agree mostly with the narrative that the authorities would want to be agreed with, and ultimately for there to be a tacit agreement and a tacit acceptance of some of the things that all the people in this room have dedicated their life to fight against.
Thanks very much, Omar. We've now got a little bit of time to open up to discussion. We are running a little bit late, so I have to apologise in advance. We're going to take a tea break, and also a break for prayers for those who wish to at 2:45, so time is quite limited. The time at the next plenary will be a little bit more relaxed, so if I don't get round to you, set it up, and we'll try to cover it in the next session. Somebody I hope will now be about to stand up with a roving mic to help anybody who has a point to make. John.
I don't know, can you hear me?
Yeah, if you want to be on the live stream.
Very quickly, first of all, thanks on this conference, thanks kindly to all the contributions just wanted to make one point which was discussed to an extent on the platform, which is that Islamophobia plays a central role in not just any one political party, whether it's the Conservative Party or parties on the far right, but in the state itself. And this is absolutely fundamental to understand this. So when people are talking about, for example, an inquiry into the Conservative Party about Islamophobic statements made by this or that candidate, actually that is a very shallow take on what was a deeply embedded strategic imperative behind the British state. Why? Because it's tightly connected into its foreign policy. And the biggest danger that Jeremy Corbyn posed wasn't because he wanted to nationalise trains, wasn't because he wanted to redistribute wealth, although they opposed those things. It was because he was going to oppose, and he has a track record of opposing, UK foreign policy. And I think that one thing that we have to make sure that we maintain after this election result is that we have to maintain opposition to UK foreign policy. And that actually means as well, and I think this is really important that we say this, we have to put Palestine activism to the very core of that agenda. Because there can be no doubt whatsoever that Palestinian activism, standing up for the rights of Palestinians, that has come under attack, no matter what anyone says. And we have to make sure that in Scotland we do everything we possibly can to ensure that that's at the very top of the agenda. Very lastly is this. I do think that we need forms of organisation that are going to allow us to develop these ideas, but which are also going to allow us to defend ourselves and are going to allow all kinds of communities to come together to have this conversation. Because the thing that they're trying to break the back of, and in England I'm afraid to say that it looks in some places like they've managed to put this down, is solidarity between people of different backgrounds. That's what they fear most. And in Scotland they're going to try and stoke up resentment in the same way that they have in England. And Scotland's not going to be immune from this. And therefore, welcome the conference today and put forward a discussion point for folk to think about is how do we organise, what's the best way that we can organise ourselves in order to meet these challenges.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Is anybody else? Yeah.
I just wanted to about saying he's going on about really imperialism, but as it affects the situation with Israel and Palestine in particular, and the whole sort of kind of media war about Zionism and Islamophobia. If you think of the Palestinians as a people, not as Muslims, not as Christians, not as secularists or whatever. However, that's one thing. However, the reality is that the world has been taught to think of Palestinians as Muslims, thanks to the Israelis who want a conflict that sees Arabs and Muslims on the one side and the poor minority of the Jewish Zionists on the other. And who gets squeezed in that? The Christian Palestinians who have been genocidally attacked for decades. How many of them are left? I can't remember really right now. But because they are not viewed as Palestinians, they're only viewed as Muslim Palestinians, not as Palestinians. Just so I'm trying to further the point that it's just been made that people of all different shades of opinion, creeds, whatever, need to band together, not to put their own thing first. That's all I want to say about that. Thanks.
Very much. Anybody else? There's got to be 100 questions or contributions burning in your minds. Just while people are thinking about it a bit, I know that in most of the Palestine solidarity groups in this country was quite strong current of not discussing religion, not discussing Islam, and therefore also not discussing Islamophobia. Now, I'm sure one reason for that is to avoid getting embroiled in the internal politics of Palestine, and that's not really our job as a solidarity movement. But another a danger of that is we actually legitimise the idea that there's something problematic about Islam being engaged in politics. So, you know, that there's an issue there possibly worth exploring. I wonder if the speakers would like to comment both on that and on the points that are being raised from the floor. Who would like to go first?
I'm just going to make a very short comment on what you've mentioned. I totally agree with you that the Palestinian problem, the Palestinian cause should not be seen, particularly for people here, from a religious perspective. But the silencing of any discussion about Palestine is mainly happening under the banner of Islamophobia. Why? Because actually when the Muslims in the West starting to march and go for demonstration, it was because of the Salman Rushdie's affair, which has actually written a novel in which he actually has misrepresented our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. This was the first moment actually within the Muslim grassroots actually thinking of themselves as being Muslims and has been attacked. And then actually you come into this Charlie Hebdo thingies and stuff. I'm not going to mention this free speech discussion within the West when it comes against Muslims, but not against any other religious groups. But even in Palestine today, I've read some of the news that Israel has rejected to give the permit for Palestinians who are Christians from Gaza Strip to go and visit Bethlehem, which is actually we have the Nativity Church there, to spend the Christmas there. So Israel is not killing only the Muslim Palestinians, whereas actually the Christians in Palestine is less than 3% of the Palestinian population. But they are targeting any Muslim, like when they have assassinated Abu Ali Mustafa. Abu Ali Mustafa is a socialist, or he has a Muslim background, but he does not identify as Muslim or a Muslim. They have assassinated him in his own office. So it's not about the Muslim resistance to Israel, it's about the Palestinian whole project. But I totally agree that part of this is actually being legitimized, the silencing of the Palestinian cause through the Islamophobic discourse. But because a lot of Muslims now across the world and other non-Muslims, for Muslims, the issue of Palestine is not just about human rights. It's about killing, it's about actually killing Muslims, but also not to Palestine. It's about silencing any resistance against the international policies in Kashmir, in the Muslim Rohingya, and actually the Uyghur Muslims. It's happening across the universe. It's not only about Palestinians. Like Muslims across the universe are being actually targeted by all these policies that try to silence their mobilities. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think Mick would probably be able to contribute something to that.
Yeah, sure. A guy called Father Manuel Musalam from the Gaza Diocese of the Catholic Church. I've been to a Catholic school. I'm not usually sympathetic to such voices. But in Gaza, he said, look, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian. I believe in... He said, culturally I'm a Muslim. Politically I'm a Muslim. I know what he meant. He was part of the national resistance. And I think that's part of the history. Many prominent names in the Palestinian national movement were Christians. George Habash, Naif Hawatmeh, other names came to the fore in resisting Zionism and imperialism, and they are a proud part of that fantastic tradition. We were proud to bring over here for a speaking tour Archbishop
Ibtehal Ramadan.
Ibtehal Ramadan spoke across Scotland, and he said, look, in Palestine there has never been a day of fighting between Christians and Muslims. And when you look at the entire Middle East, this is a role model. For me, in any event, Palestinian internal politics is a secondary or tertiary issue. I'm not involved in this struggle like other people here because I love Palestine. I don't even know what that means, actually. I mean, I see people carry these slogans, I don't know what it means at all. We didn't love Vietnam when we struggled against the genocidal massacre by the Americans with British political support. We didn't love Zulu or Hausa cooking in South Africa. We knew that Thatcher and others considered Nelson Mandela a terrorist, and they were trying to maintain the apartheid system for a very long time. It was because of the complicity of our governments in these grotesque crimes that we were impelled to take action. If you like, many of you dream, I know there's a couple of socialists of all sorts of stripes here, we dream of international organisation, but there is an international of crime already in existence. It exists and it's real. Since the massacre of 2014 in Palestine, British arms sales to Israel have gone up tenfold. Look at the snipers killing limbless, killing children, killing journalists. Britain sells sniper rifle parts to the Israeli army. That's the main reason. You might like, I hate hummus to be honest, right? You might like hummus, you might like dubka dancing, that's a choice. We have to be active because our government is a complicit part of the axis of evil internationally. So I think that's the fundamental point. And if Karl Marx had never said anything else other than a nation that oppresses another can never itself be free, he would still be, he would be in our minds. You cannot take part in the oppression of the Palestinians forever and ever and ever and not pay a cost. Tony Blair and MI5 recognised that. When they invaded Iraq, they became recruiting sergeants for ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We have to realise that this heroin-like addiction to invading other countries or supporting Israel to do what they do, which is the same thing, will ultimately come back and we'll pay a price. So we don't support the Palestinians just out of moral outrage, which is healthy and justified. We have to support them because ultimately we're all going to hang together if we don't deliver effective solidarity, and we are inspired by this struggle.
Thanks very much, Nick. A couple of minutes left, Nargess.
I am going to just speak to the gentleman that was talking about we need to keep maintaining solidarity. It is difficult in England for sure at the moment, but I'm again just going to put my journalist hat on and say that we should, as activists, I think the solution now is outside of the status quo, it's outside of party politics, it's outside the status quo of activism that was working outside the status quo mainstream, and social media, despite the way it is trying to suffocate us and shut us down, is still a good format and forum to get our message out, and we can all use those tools and train ourselves on those tools, and I think probably we could be doing a better job of it a lot of the time. So I will just end on that point. You know, we were talking about how Facebook shuts us down, there are ways around it. Train yourself, however young or old you are, and be a part of that discussion, because I do think it makes a difference.
Thanks very much, Nargess. Omar, a couple of minutes and then we break.
In terms of foreign policy, I agree with you saying that foreign policy is at the core of a lot of this. I mean, as Mick just said there, I mean, we are complicit in this. We're complicit in Palestine, we're complicit in Kashmir. I mean, even in Afghanistan, I mean, the B-52 bombers that bombed Afghanistan before the ground invasion, they were built in Scotland. So the weapons industry and indeed foreign policy has got a massive part to play in this. Just what Jonathan was saying there about having the kind of solidarity to tackle this. I think when you talk about the Scottish context, is the elephant in the room, which is to do with the Standing to Racism March and everything that's happened around the Friends of Israel lobby kind of getting involved in that. I think it's agreement with that. Yeah, so I mean that's put a massive hole in the solidarity that existed in Scotland, and for organisations like MSDS, for example, who pulled out of the march because they didn't want to share that platform, it raises that question again for us, as is the theme of this session, which is the closing down spaces and how then our voice is heard within those kinds of circles where we need that solidarity and we need that kind of that camaraderie in order to try and beat what's in front of us now. I think with the Conservative side of the thumping majority that we've got down south, I think there's a massive constitutional question as well that needs to be answered, specifically with what happened with the Scottish seats and the Ireland seats as well. So I think there's probably an opportunity there as well, in terms of how us on a kind of level here can maybe do something, maybe forgive me for saying it, without the rest of the UK.
Thanks very much. We're now going to take a really short quarter of an hour break that will, I hope, be tea and biscuits at the back. The Garner's Hill room on the second floor is available for prayers for those who wish. Please try to get back here for a prompt start at 3 o'clock for the next session. Thank you very much.